So the world we live in is louder than ever, not in terms of noise, but in terms of pressure. The pressure to meet deadlines, the pressure to meet expectations, and the pressure to become someone you actually aren't. So this video is not about escaping this noise because it's never going to go away completely. But it's about learning to be steady within it. Hello everyone and welcome back to this week's video. So today's episode is about something that is exhausting all of us quietly, even if we can't fully explain it. It's not deadlines directly, it's not stress, or it's not pressure in the traditional sense. It's noise. And not the kind that hurts your ears, it's the kind that overwhelms your mind. There is something strange about the world we are living in right now. Not strange in an obvious way, but strange in a subtle, constant way. Like when a room feels colder even though the temperature hasn't changed. Or when your mind feels full even if you haven't done anything the whole day. Every generation had its own challenges, but this generation's challenge is volume. The amount of constant notifications, constant opinions, constant updates, and constant comparisons we receive is unfathomable. Even silence doesn't feel silent anymore. You sit alone, phone away, everything quiet, and your mind is still buzzing, thinking about what you should be doing, where you're behind, or what everyone is doing. Somewhere along the way, life stopped being about living and started becoming about managing all these interruptions. Work gets interrupted, rest gets interrupted, even thinking gets interrupted. And yet, here's the part that always fascinated me. Somewhere along the way, you come across someone who feels steady. Not perfect, not stress free, just grounded. They are in the same world, surrounded by the same chaos as you and I, facing the same challenges, but they don't get pulled in every direction that they see. They don't bend every time when things get loud. It makes you wonder what have they figured out that you and I haven't, that most of us haven't. Because clearly the world isn't going to slow down for any of us. The noise isn't going to stop. The distractions aren't going anywhere. So the real question becomes, how do you stay calm in a world that refuses to be quiet? How do you stay intentional when everything around you is competing for your attention on a daily basis? How do you grow without burning out through all this noise? This episode isn't about escaping to a mountain, or it's not about deleting every app and pretending that noise doesn't exist. It's about something far more practical, something far more powerful. Learning how to stay steady in a world that keeps shaking. Learning how to be comfortably uncomfortable. Calm enough to think, but challenged enough to grow. Because the goal isn't to eliminate the noise, it's to make sure it doesn't shape who you become. So take a breath and settle in. Let's talk about how to thrive, not despite the chaos, but within it. There's something important that we misunderstand about noise. We often think that it lives in our phones. We often think that it comes from all the constant notifications, constant messages, or the constant reels that we keep scrolling through. But that's often not the case, because if that were the case, switching off your phone would solve everything. Staying away from your phone would save you from all this noise. But that is never the case. Because the noise that matters doesn't come from outside. It's the echo that stays within you, it's the echo that stays behind. Even when everything is quiet, the mind keeps talking. It replays conversations, it compares timelines, it reminds you what you should be doing. It pulls you towards something, anything, just to avoid stillness, because that's how the mind is. That's why silence feels uncomfortable now. Not peaceful, just uncomfortable. The moment there is nothing happening, the mind rushes to fill in the gap through any way that it can find. And we have been really good in providing it all the ways to stay distracted, all the ways to encounter this noise, and all the ways to absorb it. The moment there's nothing happening, the mind rushes to fill in this gap. Not because it's curious, but because it's restless. And over time, that restlessness becomes normal. Constant stimulation stops feeling like overload and it starts feeling like the baseline. And you get used to this amount of noise and stimulation. So when things slow down, it feels wrong, almost like something is missing, because that's how we trained our mind. And that is the trap. Because if the mind never rests, clarity disappears. You start reacting instead of choosing, consuming instead of creating, and absorbing instead of deciding what you actually want. And slowly, without noticing, the noise begins to shape you, your pace, your priorities, and your sense of urgency. Not because the world forced it, but because the mind never learned how to be still. Some people don't crumble under noise, not because they aren't affected by it. They're steady because their minds aren't open to anything and everything. They don't absorb every opinion. They don't respond to every pull. They don't let everything inside. They hear the noise, but they don't become it. And that difference is everything. There's a lie that is floating around on how to survive this world. That you either have to push relentlessly or completely disconnect, either grind harder or escape. But most people don't want either. They don't want burnout and they don't want isolation. They want a life that stretches them without breaking them. And that's where this idea comes in. Real growth doesn't happen in comfort, but it doesn't happen in chaos either. It happens in that middle space, that beautiful middle space of being comfortably uncomfortable, where things are slightly uncomfortable but purposeful. Comfort feels safe, but it slowly shrinks you. Chaos feels intense, but it scatters you. Growth sits right between the two, where effort has direction, where discomfort has meaning. The problem is the modern world mistakes noise for challenge. Endless updates feel like staying informed. Constant comparison often feels like motivation. Being busy often feels like progress. But that noise doesn't build strength, it drains your attention. Challenge is different. Challenge sharpens you. It asks you for something, it leaves you stronger on the other side. The people who thrive don't chase comfort, but they also don't sit down in chaos. They choose discomfort intentionally. They lean into things that grow them and step away from things that scatter them. They don't fill every moment. They don't respond to every pull. They don't confuse stimulation with meaning. And slowly something shifts. If you try this out, you will see this shift in happen very slowly. Focus stops becoming feeling forced. Calm stops feeling rare and progress stops feeling chaotic. Not because life got easier, but because attention became intentional. And that's the power this idea has. That's the power of being comfortably uncomfortable. That's the power of choosing to be uncomfortable, to challenge yourself enough, but not to overstrain or burn yourself out. So here's the truth that changes everything. The world is not going to get any quieter. The pace won't slow down, the opinions won't stop, the distractions will not disappear. So thriving isn't about controlling the world. It's about building something inside that doesn't collapse every time things around you get loud. That doesn't start with routines or hacks or a 75-day hard challenge. It starts with identity. When someone knows who they are, the noise loses its grip. Not every voice matters, not every update is urgent, not every comparison deserves attention. Strength starts looking less like intensity and more like selectivity, choosing what matters and letting the rest pass. When that happens, something rare returns: mental space, the ability to sit with a thought for long enough to think properly about it, to feel without immediately reacting, to hear your own voice again. And once the mind has space, clarity follows. Decisions feel clearer, direction feels steadier, and life feels less reactive and more choice based. You're no longer chasing balance. Balance forms around you and around your choices. The chaos stays, but it stops being personal and doesn't affect you with the same intensity anymore. It becomes like weather, present but not controlling. It's not like if it rains, you are going to stop all your plans for the day. It's not like you won't work. It's not like you won't have fun. It's just a thing that exists around you, but you will keep doing your thing. So that is how noise ends up becoming. It becomes something that is around you, but it doesn't control you anymore. And that's when thriving begins. So here is what it all comes down to. The noise was never the enemy. The problem was letting it decide who you become. When the noise narrates your life, everything feels heavy, everything feels scattered. But when you lower the volume inside, the world changes shape. Not quieter, just less controlling. Thriving today isn't about escaping life, it's about standing steady inside it, carrying your own calm, choosing depth over speed and direction over distraction. And if none of this feels easy yet, that's okay. This isn't about becoming unshakable overnight, and that is obviously not possible. No one is perfect in this sense, neither you, nor me, nor anyone in this world. It's all about becoming a little less shakable today than yesterday. One pause, one boundary, one conscious choice at a time. The noise will keep shouting, the chaos will keep swirling, but you get to decide what enters and what affects you, what stays and what shapes you finally. And that decision, quiet, private, and powerful, is where freedom begins.